Should you even enter consulting in the first place? There's so much hype around management consulting that people do not really give you the truth and the reality of what working in consulting is actually like. You only hear about the competitive compensation, the sexy projects that you work on, but nobody really tells you about the work-life balance or maybe some of the other negatives of working in consulting. So if you've been wondering whether or not you should enter the consulting industry, then you came to the right spot. Because in this video, I will give you an unbiased opinion as to whether or not I think consulting is worth it. And the way I'm going to do that is share with you 3 big pros of working in consulting, 3 negatives of working in consulting, and then I will always end it with my own opinion. And by the way, if you're new to this channel, hi, my name is Ziad. I'm a Harvard Business School admit and ex-consultant, and in this channel, we talk about all things business, career, finance, and entrepreneurship. Alright, so let's start off with the pros. Here are all the reasons for why you should break into consulting. I want to start off with reason number 1, and that is the competitive pay. It is no doubt that consulting pays probably better than some of the most traditional industries that a lot of people exit from. Even when you compare it to, say, the typical engineering pay or any other type of business roles, I still think that consulting comes on top. To give some numbers to it, most entry-level roles at McKinsey, BCG, or Bain would pay close to $110,000 in base pay and then $20,000 in bonus. So you could be making close to $130,000 immediately after college. When you compare that to most other jobs, I would say the average engineer would make close to $85,000 to $100,000 out of college, and then other types of business roles would be anywhere between $65,000 to $85,000. So you do get a premium when it comes to pay when it comes to consulting. Now on to pro number 2, and that is the diversity of projects. If you have no idea what type of industry you're interested in, or even what type of function you're interested in, then I think consulting is one of the best opportunities for you to explore that. You will work on retail cases one day, maybe then you'll go work on manufacturing, you'll do some data strategy, you'll go do some implementation work, you'll go do some operations. So there's an eclectic range of projects that you can work on in consulting, and that is something that is actually quite beneficial for a lot of people early in their career, especially if they don't know exactly what they want to do. And trust me, you don't get that anywhere else. Most other roles, you will be stuck to a specific function or a specific industry, so consulting gives you that breadth of work. Okay, and now on to pro number 3, and that is the people. I cannot deny that you will probably meet the smartest and brightest people when you work in consulting. You will get a lot of time sitting in a room with extremely intelligent people, so you will learn a ton from them. The model of consulting is basically based around pulling the smartest people and putting them all in a room. So just the fact that you will be sitting in that same room is a privilege and something that is honestly putting you in the top 1% because you're going to learn from some of the brightest minds out there in the world. And that's not just from your peer side. Also, by working in consulting, you get a lot of exposure to, say, C-suite and VPs and SVPs, so you can see how kind of the top 1% of folks in the business world are thinking. And that's not something you get exposure to in other industries. The reality is, in other types of roles, you're not going to be getting that exposure to senior management. It does vary on a case-by-case basis, but I think consulting is one of those industries that gives you that exposure and access to extremely smart people. Okay, so you're probably sitting here being like, Ziad, you told me that you were going to give me an unbiased opinion, but you only spoke about the pros. Well, in this section of the video now, I'm going to start talking about the cons and the things that not a lot of people talk about. And by the way, what I'm going to be talking about is not just from my own experience, but it's also from experiences of friends and kind of all of their negative experiences from consulting. The first one, and it's a very common one, and that is the work-life balance. It is not a question as to whether or not you're going to work a lot when you go into consulting. It is very typical for people to work anywhere between 60 to 80 hours every single week. And think about it this way, if you were to go get any other type of job that's not consulting, investment banking, private equity, you'd be averaging close to 40 hours a week, maybe a little bit more. So you're essentially working 50% more than any of the other jobs that you would be working immediately after college. But I think what sticks out the most is your control over the work. Typically, you cannot really control your schedule. It's not that it's 60 hours a week that you can decide when you work and when you don't. Because it's client services, typically you have to be in close to 7 to 8 a.m. and then you stay there until 8 to 9 p.m. always working with your team. The deliverables are very fast paced, so you're basically kind of micromanaged every single hour or 2 hours for you to deliver a specific ask. So as I said, you don't really have a lot of control over your day and you're going to be working a lot of hours. And now onto con number 2, and that is the lack of end-to-end project experience. So what do I mean by this? Typically, consultants get hired super early on to do this high-level strategy project. and then they hand off the recommendation off to their client, but they don't necessarily see the project from start to finish. So a lot of the consultants don't really learn how to implement the recommendations that they give. Now think about it from this point. If you want to go into entrepreneurship down the line, it is important for you to not just recommend a specific initiative or strategy, you also need to be able to implement that for your business. So unfortunately, if you work into consulting, you don't really get a lot of exposure into that project management, implementation, operations muscle, and it's not something that you're going to develop while you're there. But I do think that having the end-to-end view of projects is crucial if you want to succeed in any type of business endeavor or environment. And now on to con number 3, and that is the lack of management experience. So think about it this way. The typical career path for consulting goes like this. You start off immediately after college as a business analyst or associate, and you will spend 2 years in that role. From there, you could get promoted to senior associate, and then afterwards you'll go do a 2-year MBA, and then you'll come back as a post-MBA consultant, and then lastly, you'll make it into some form of engagement manager, project leader, or something of that sort. It takes close to 6 to 8 years for you to make it to project leader. So think about it that way, you will not be managing teams until you are at least 6 to 8 years out of college. Now compare that to some other roles. Let's say you go in as a finance analyst, in 2 years you make it to senior finance analyst, and then a year later you make it to finance manager. You'll be able to manage people only 3 years out of college compared to the 6 to 8 years if you were to go into consulting. And now again, if your intention is to go into, say, entrepreneurship, it is important for you to know how to manage people because ultimately you're going to have a large team that is reporting to you, and having that people management skill is quite crucial if you want to succeed in your endeavor. Just as a quick example and side note, I'm currently the director of strategy at a company called RicePoint, and I'm managing 11 people. This is an experience that I would have never had I gone into consulting. So let's take a step back and summarize all of the pros and cons. When it comes to the pros, you have 3 main ones. The first one is the competitive pay. The second one is the diversity of projects. And then the third one is the network and the people. When it comes to the cons, you also have 3 main ones. The first one is work-life balance. The second one is the lack of operational experience. And then the third one is the lack of management experience. But in all honesty, looking at just the pros and cons is not going to help you make a decision. And instead, I recommend you use the following framework. First, try to decide on what your long-term goal is. Do you want to be an investor, an operator, a CEO, a business owner? You cannot create a path for yourself if you don't know the final destination. Number 2, what skills and experiences do you need in order for you to get to that final destination? For example, if you want to become an investor, then some form of investing experience and knowledge in finance is pretty much required if you want to get there. So the type of job that you're going to be looking for will be one that will give you that investing experience as well as that finance knowledge. If you want to be a CEO, then definitely leadership experience, management experience, strategy, and operations are all skills and experiences that you need to have under your belt before you can become a CEO. And then number 3, try to map out all of the different industries that meet the specific skills and criteria that you are looking for. For example, if you want to be a CEO, then some of the clear skills, as I mentioned, are strategy, operations, and management. Consulting is not the only industry that will give you exposure to these. You can work in internal strategy at a corporate company. You can go work in an early stage startup and you'll develop the management experience. You can also diversify and work a little bit in consulting, a little bit in like corporate strategy, and a little bit in startups. So lay all the options that you have in front of you. And then lastly, try to highlight the specific skill or experience that matters most to you today, and then map it to one of those options that you previously had, and then determine which is the one that will give you that skill or that experience better than any of the other options. And this is the exact framework that I use that helped me to decide against consulting. Ultimately, I realized that I wanted to be a CEO of my own startup within the education technology field. The skills that I need to get there are indeed strategy, operations, and management. My options were either consulting or working directly in strategy at an education technology company. Ultimately, management experience was very important to me, which is why I chose the latter over going into consulting. And to this day, I'm pretty happy with my decision. I was able to develop my strategy toolkit, learn a lot about operations, but most importantly, develop my management muscle, which is the skill that I said that I cared about the most immediately after college. Anyways, I hope that you found this video helpful. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me either through the comments or on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you all. And that's all I have for you today. I'll catch you in the next one.